And that's that, my friends. Enzo Maresca's first game as our manager ends in a 2-2 draw against Wrexham. Was this the most exciting game? Probably not. Were there some interesting moments to decipher? Yes, but if you're one of those passionate fans that stayed up till 3 AM to watch this game, you're a real trooper. Salute yourselves, but unfortunately, your efforts weren't rewarded with a very exciting game. But listen, I'm not here to criticize the level of football. We all understand that the first game is all about building fitness. The scoreline is just a bonus. We all understand that. But with this review today, I want to give you guys an understanding, if you didn't see the game, what exactly went down. So I'll be discussing what happened in the first half and the second half. I'll discuss some of the players that stood out. I'll discuss the goals, and I'll discuss some of the things I learned from the system as well too, to give you guys the best perspective of what went down tonight against Wrexham. So I hope you guys enjoy. Show us some love if you're excited to see the team playing again. Let's try and get over 3K likes today. I know you guys can do that. Let's get straight into things. Now let's start with the match breakdown first. Looking at the first half, this was the first half lineup on screen. We did see Nkunku playing as the offensive 8. We did see Reece James play as the inverted fullback. We saw stars for Guiu. We saw Tyreek George on the left flank, and we saw Levi Cole playing the left back / left centre back role in this team. So there were some surprises, but essentially with how things went down in the first half, outside of a very fiery start to the game, beef between McLean and Levi Cole, and I have to say Cole was completely in the right. I'm not gonna lie, I like a bit of a skirmish. I like to see the passion on the field. I like that it matters to the players, but I have to say, come on, as a fan base, we all have collective PTSD and trauma from seeing our players getting these injuries in the States in particular, yeah, and it comes down to these dry ass, dusty ass pitches. So if you're going to come in with stupid late challenges in a preseason game like this, expect to get a reaction, and I like that Cole defended himself. But honestly, after seeing how the game started, I expected fireworks, but they never really flew off, to be fair with you. But outside of some dangerous set piece plays from Reece James, are we seeing our first signs and evidence of what Bernardo Cueva, our new set piece specialist, is introducing to the team? Who knows? Because I noticed a lot of these outswingers to the near post that was causing a lot of danger towards Wrexham. Let's see what happens throughout pre-season. But outside of those moments, we didn't really create too much threat. It felt like a lot of times the wingers were a bit isolated at times. It felt like the connections between the left-sided 8 and the right-sided 8, Nkunku and Kans. You know, to play that role, you need to have a good understanding with your teammates, right? I think we can all accept that. And obviously, it's their first time that these guys are playing together in a manner like this. So our progression didn't really evolve or progress as much as it could have, and we had a lot of control in the first half without much threat. So when we scored the first goal, it was well taken. Tyreek George created that moment for us with a nice little pauser, then shift inside, and he hits it hard and low at the far post, creates that chaos for us, and then Nkunku with that experience, powerful finish. And this is why he will be key for us for next season, just for that finishing ability in the final third. And then after that, that was essentially what really went down in the first half. In the second half, we saw a brand new squad. You're seeing the lineup on screen. We did see Gusto play the inverted role that Reece James played in the first half. We saw Achampong play the wide centre-back role on the right-hand side. We saw Angelo on the right, Broja up front, and we saw Santos and Ugo Chukwu being the surprise player playing the Ndidi role, playing as the offensive 8 on the right side. And you know what? We did show some promise in terms of like some nice little first touch passes and goals between like Leslie, Gusto, and Angelo, especially down that right hand side. That's where most of that threat was coming. I'd say Angelo had the most threat by far throughout the entirety of the second half. He's a tidy player, and I'll say this, with all these little like parts of his game, these little like touch and goes, these little like body swerves and body feints and these little deceptions, I feel like his game is really well suited to positional play. And I'm thinking to myself, would it surprise me if somehow he ends up remaining with the squad, because there's a player here that makes things happen and he feels very comfortable playing in this particular system. So let's see what happens here. But obviously, this half will be remembered for the goals we conceded against Wrexham And even though this is a pre-season game, we can't take everything too seriously at the same time. I want to mention the fact that the goals we conceded, they could act as a precursor to potential issues we could face once the season starts or as we get better, because it comes down to this. If you're going to be playing with a 3 at the back, if you give away those turnovers in midfield, which we did on 2 occasions, one came from Leslie and Santos, the other came from Achimpong overplaying, you'll find yourself susceptible to the overloads out wide. For the first goal, notice how many men are behind Guiu out here. All they're waiting for now is a cross in the area, and there's a good chance they can make something happen. And for the second goal, a cheap giveaway by Achimpong releases Maresca in space, and of course he has experience. Nice hard finish bottom right corner. These moments are like the system's kryptonite, and Leicester City would also concede goals in a similar fashion. So of course, let's hope that we can find out what happens. But my friends, to give you guys a lowdown between the first half and second half, comes down to this. First half, we had a lot more control. We stopped Wrexham having many opportunities at all, if any, but that came at the expense of creating proper opportunities. In the second half, we created better opportunities, but that came at the expense of having complete control. So that's the match breakdown out of the way. Let's now move on to discussing some of the key players that stood out. And for the first player that stood out, I'd have to say that would be Guiu, because one thing I really liked about him was his movement off the ball, his physicality, his running, because this guy presses for days. And I think from what we saw in his comps and, you know, the analysis before we signed him, I mean, he is living up to the goods at the moment. He's a willing presser, and that really helps us. But in that first half, a lot of the best opportunities we had when it came to creating things against Wrexham came from the runs that were being made by Guiu. And in particular, he was making these hook runs, and basically when he would start this run, he'd be withdrawn from the opposition defender. And he's very smart. He knows how to make these types of runs. He would make that diagonal hooked run into the channels to stretch a compact Wrexham defense. And by doing that, it gave the team an outlet to play a long ball to, or a direct long pass to, that could help us, of course, get in behind Wrexham a lot quicker. So that was good to see from him. He was making things happen with his movement. A lot of times he'd be dropping from his position to link up with the midfield. He showed a lot of nice, tidy passes. Of course, he's a Spanish striker. He's from Barcelona. If Barca fans say this guy has no tech, you have to kind of ignore it, because Barca tech and other tech is on like a completely different level. But it was nice to see him start this game. I look forward to seeing more of him. And can he somehow shoehorn his way into staying with the first team squad once the season starts? That is a big test too. Obviously, I have to discuss the performances of our inverted fullbacks in Reece James and Gusto. Now, in Reece James, I thought his set piece taking was very strong. He created opportunities through that, and I thought he defended really well. He's a very solid, dependable, reliable defender. In terms of seeing anything in terms of ball progression, I didn't see as much at times, to be fair with you. It didn't help that Noni didn't necessarily have the best game down that right hand side, but I think I'd have to see more from Reece James in that area. But to move on to Gusto, outside of some like nice little, you know, progressive plays in terms of his link up with Angelo and Leslie Ogochukwu, I think one thing that stood out to me was how precise his passing needs to be if he's playing more as a midfield player in a pivot right. Because on a few occasions when he had to play that pass in behind to release a Raheem Sterling on the left hand side, he'd be overhitting it, or he'd be overplaying a pass. And obviously this midfield role he has experience in, but it isn't his tailor-made position. But equally, now that he's playing in a new role, it means that he'll have to use a different skill set at times to get the best out for the team. And I felt like I saw some inconsistencies, but at the same time, come on, it's the player's first game, they're building fitness. I want to give you guys some observations without giving you like any concrete criticisms. Once pre-season ends, we'll have a better understanding of what's really going on. But it's interesting. Some may argue, Nini, could we just be better just having like standard midfield players in the pivot without having to move a fullback in that area? That's a fair argument, but let's give a few more games to see how he developed in this area. But outside of tactical benefits from like a fan enjoyment point of view, I didn't really see too much from either one to really like justify if this could be like the long-term thing that's going to help push us on in the future. You heard my thoughts earlier about Angelo, but I think another player that did stand out would be Romeo Lavia. Now I think with Lavia's experience working on the Maresca already, he showed a lot of why Maresca, I think, could be turning towards Lavia a lot during this season, because Lavia was really kickstarting a lot of our attacks, a lot of nice, perfectly weighted line-breaking passes, you know, knows when to time the pass forwards, you know, outside of the foot passes, reverse balls. But at the same time, he screened the defense well. He broke up the play when it mattered, and he's someone that's very comfortable playing in that role, receiving a lot of touches, dictating the play and pushing the team forwards, and I thought he gave a good account of himself in this game today. Now, to end things with my closing thoughts on the tactics that I saw today, I think if there's one thing that we have to accept when it comes to positional play, is that it can create a particular game state, and we're going to be very familiar with seeing a lot of opposition defending in the same way, and I think they're going to start to use a back five, because Wrexham, listen, they're a bit deeper in their preseason, and they want us to give an account of themselves. You know, last year we thrashed them 5-1 and we completely tore through them. This year it was a lot tighter of a contest, and that's credit that goes to Wrexham. But they had a lot of joy because they had a back five, which meant they could go man v man against our wide wingers, our two attacking eights, and our striker. They had a midfield three as well that would screen any balls in behind from the defenders' passes into our midfield. And then they had two up front as well that can then press ball side depending on where the ball was. And using all of this combined in a mid-block structure, it meant that they were funneling all our passes out wide into areas where we didn't have enough men to play through them. And they had a lot of joy in terms of nullifying us and kind of stopping us from creating too much. So I think that was one area that we have to see improvement in. But I think a lot of that improvement can come from the wide eights having a better understanding with their offensive teammates around them. That is the key thing right here. Khan started the game slow in the first half, but he ended it a lot stronger in the second half. So I'm excited to see more of him in the next game against Celtic. And Kunku took his goal well, but a few times that he was trying these like little disguised reverse balls or first time one-touch plays, maybe Guiu or maybe other players around him weren't on the same wavelength at the moment. So a lot of times that wavelength, that chemistry also matters, because these guys are going to be key for us when it comes to breaking down teams and making sense of our positional play. And as I said earlier, the thing that this system could be susceptible to is those moves in behind down our flank, because the danger of these moves, the danger of being exposed out wide, is that we're giving away good areas for opposition teams to create shots on goal, because you can run directly straight to goal. And that is the risk you play with this system, right? As I said, Leicester was susceptible to this at times. I understand the rust in our game, so I'm not going to take too much from it. I think Celtic will give us a bigger indication about what's going on. But equally, I keep saying this, with our first game against Man City being the opening game of the new season, I feel like this pre-season has to be properly focused, properly on point, and we have to start seeing a better, stronger rhythm soon. So there's a little bit of pressure, but equally, we saw some interesting things. But personally, I didn't see anything too new or too different. And at times, it reminded me of when Pochettino was trying the positional play stuff at the start of last season, where we had a lot of possession without really being able to, like, you know, break teams down or create opportunities. I think it'll be different once players like Nico Jackson comes back in the team and Palmer returns, when Enzo or Caicedo get their minutes. Let's see what they bring to the team. But I think if there's one thing I'd be curious to see, are we going to continue to see maybe Reece James and Gusto invert? If anything, I like the idea of both of them playing in the same team together, with Reece James being that wide centre back, or maybe Gusto playing there, and then them two like alternating positions, because I think they could offer us a bit more when it comes to having to play out when we're up against these mid-block teams. So, my friends, that is everything that we learned in tonight's pre-season friendly against Wrexham. Yes, the result's a bit disappointing considering the, you know, dedication we've all shown to stay up this late, kill our sleeping patterns, and get into work late tomorrow. But that's what you do for the club you love, and I'm excited to see what else we can do during this pre-season. Of course, come back on Saturday so we can dissect what happens against Celtics. And my friends, on that note, I am the EFC. This is Blue Lines TV. See you all soon. Cool.